All right, so I'm going to start out with reviewing the Northern Renaissance. I know we've already kind of gotten through it, but I'm going to review a couple things. I need you to listen, and then you'll begin writing your notes. So remember that the Renaissance is going to begin in Italy. That's why they call it the Italian Renaissance. But through trade and scholars, remember, scholars are individuals who are educated, they're big on academics, they're teachers, things like that. They're going to spread these ideals of humanism and secularism, okay? So it's going to spread north, which Italy is located in the continent of Europe, so it's going to spread, and that's why it's called the Northern Renaissance. So with trade, you have networks of trade routes which will be dominated by the Hanseatic League. Remember that they regulate trade and keep it fair, but ideas are going to spread from Italy through trade and scholars. Books. Remember, we talked about Johannes Gutenberg is going to develop that printing press, and it's going to be a printing revolution because remember before that the church had a lot of power because they were the individuals that had the Bible, because the Bible in the Middle Ages was handwritten. When the printing press is created with the movable type, it is going to cause the mass production of the Bible as well as other books that may not be related to religion. People are going to be able to have an education, knowledge is going to spread rapidly, and people are going to even begin to question the church like, hey, the Bible says this, but this is what you guys are preaching. And the church is going to feel directly challenged as people gain more education, as they focus in on themselves. Remember, humanism, I told you, think individual, myself. And people are going to be on a quest for knowledge, education, and they're going to expand their minds. So the printing press is going to be a wonderful innovation for the Renaissance. Remember, an innovation is a new idea, a method, or a new device. Okay, so I tell you that the printing press, if I ask you if it's technology, you should be shaking your head right now because they don't have iPads back then, but they do have the printing press, which will open a lot of doors for education. So let's look at the evolution of the printing press. More people can afford books. I told you, and I compared it to iPads the other day, that when you have a smaller quantity of something and it's in demand, there will be a higher price, okay? But as there's mass production, the price of an object will go down. So more people can afford books because there's a mass production of books, okay? Books are no longer scarce. They're not few and far between. There are lots of Bibles and books to be read because of the printing press. More people can have books. If you can afford it, you can have it. People will learn to read. Reading will open up the doorway for people to receive more of an education, and it won't just have to be a verbal thing. They can sit down with books, read them, take them in, and absorb them and relate them to their life. Education is going to increase. You're going to have, middle class people are going to have more of an education. The upper class is not going to have so much power anymore because middle class and even lower class people will receive education which will benefit them as well as society. Also, the Renaissance is going to spread even further. Artwork. You've learned about artwork in the Italian Renaissance, how detailed. We talked about perspective and the focal point. That artwork is not looking flat anymore, but looking three-dimensional. It pops on the page, and it has a lot of meaning, and it ties a lot of interconnections between the Roman and Greek classics, which when we talk about Northern Renaissance art, it's going to be very similar to the Italian Renaissance. It's going to be beautiful. They're going to use color, images of people, but a big thing about the Northern Renaissance is that they're going to focus in on domestic life, which domestic life, just like you remember, if you've ever heard the term domestic violence, okay, domestic violence is violence that happens at home. Now take the violence part out and think of the word domestic. It means home front, home. So when we talk about Northern Renaissance, they do a lot of domestic life portraits, which are portraits of home, people in their homes and things like that. Also, Northern Renaissance art is popular for using symbolism in their paintings. Okay, so their paintings have a lot of symbols and it has an underlining or underlining meaning. Important people. Couple people to know. Erasmus, he's going to be a priest, and he's going to believe that your life should be simple. So I know I used an example the other day that Miss Cannon probably has like 25 pairs of shoes and a whole bunch of clothes. Well, if Erasmus came into my house, he would say, well, Miss Cannon, you only need a few items of clothing. You need to, cut back on your materialistic goods. It's the materials. I always think of material things as your wants. Erasmus is going to say that you need to just hold on to what you need and keep it moving. He's very big on a simple life, okay? He's going to pull for Christian humanism. He's going to bring the ideal of humanism as in individual accomplishments, knowing yourself, and he's going to say you can love Jesus and be a Christian and still have humanism in your life. You can still receive an education. You can still spend money and make your life better. And you can still love Jesus. The church is not going to believe that humanism and Christianity can go hand in hand. But the reason the church isn't going to like humanism is because it is taking away the Catholic Church's power that they have had over people for hundreds of years. Erasmus is not going to be happy with the Catholic Church. He's not going to agree with their beliefs. And he writes a book, The Praise of the Folly, which describes some of his issues with the Catholic Church during the Renaissance. Sir Thomas More, and I don't know why, let me zoom out a little bit for you. Sir Thomas More is going to write a book called Utopia. And when we talk about the word utopia, it means that it's a beautiful, an ideal, perfect society. Sir Thomas More is going to directly criticize the English government. He's going to discuss things and relate them to the fact that, the English society during this time is harsh to the lower class. But Thomas More is going to say, how can you judge a lower class when you don't even offer them an education to even better themselves? And he's going to point out this point that the English do not, try to even help their lower class make themselves better by offering them an education. And what Thomas More is going to envision is that he wants a perfect society. He wants a smooth running government and a society where everyone is functioning, people are living well and being successful. Also, Christine de Pizan. She's the chick, okay? She's the girl of the Renaissance. She's a big deal. She's going to be an Italian-born writer. She's going to focus on the role of women in society, okay? So when I always think of Christine de Pizan, I think woman power, okay? She's going to write poetry. She's going to even create a biography on Charles V, who's the Holy Roman Emperor. And she's going to her works are going to talk about women on proper morality. So when we talk about morality, you have to understand that it's ethics. It's your principles. It's the standard you live by. And she's going to tell women that they must be proper. They must hold their heads up high. It's like, how we always say keep it classy? She's telling women how to keep it classy in the Renaissance. But also she's going to say, hey, men, women are just as smart as you guys. And you have to remember all throughout world history what you've learned that men are going to believe that women are not intelligent and that we're good at making babies and staying at home and taking care of our husband. Christine de Pizan is going to say, hey, that's all fine and good, but women are equal to men, and we deserve a fair education. She's going to say that, women are strong. So I always think that Christine de Pizan is on some girl power, back in the Renaissance. And she was well respected in society as well. William Shakespeare, which I know that if you are an English one, you will read Romeo and Juliet. The first statement says that he's the greatest English playwright, which he is an amazing English playwright, but that's a little bit biased. But back to the point. William Shakespeare is going to spread Renaissance ideas through his massive plays. He has beautiful plays like Romeo and Juliet, Much to Ado About Nothing, Midsummer Night's Dream. And these plays are going to get away from religion. And if you've read Romeo and Juliet, it does not talk about God or the Catholic Church or Jesus, anything like that. It is about love and tragedy, and it's epic and it's dramatic. And William Shakespeare is going to be a huge change from all the religious hubbub and holiness and, above everyone and God and all that stuff. He's going to get away from that and he's going to throw in Renaissance culture and society and tragedy, love, hatred, anger, fighting, in all of his plays. And people are going to go to see these plays at the Globe Theater as entertainment. People are going to be in awe of William Shakespeare, and he's a great writer. Another person that you'll have is Albrecht Dürer, which he will be a German oil painter. He's also a printmaker, an engraver, and a woodcutter. And this is actually a self-image, if you look right here. And then there's an engraving and a watercolor right here that he painted. So guys, remember when we're looking at Renaissance art, that is just extremely detailed. It's elaborate artwork and it's beautiful. It pops off the page. It looks three-dimensional. And one thing, just like the Greek art and Roman art, it's realistic. Okay, we've moved away from Middle Age art that doesn't look realistic, doesn't pop out of the page. It was very flat and boring. Renaissance art is immaculate and beautiful. So keep that in mind. Jan van Eyck, which he'll be a Flemish painter that focused on landscapes. So you talk about landscapes, it's like nature. If Mrs. Cannon was to paint a landscape of the football field, it would have the bleachers and the football field, like with the sun setting in the background. And when we talk about domestic life, I've already explained domestic life is home, bedrooms, living rooms, people in their kitchen, things like that. Which if you look closely, here is Jan van Eyck's painting. If you look here, this is a pregnant lady. This is her husband here. You got the dog, the house shoes, and they're in their bedroom. And if you look closely, I'll zoom in here, on the mirror, you can see their backsides, which is extremely detailed and beautiful. And you can actually see, the big question is, like, did Jan van Eyck paint himself in the painting? And he left his signature right above the mirror in the painting. So let's take a look and go back a little bit. You have the mirror, and then right here you can see the mirror and Jan van Eyck's signature. So it's very beautiful and detailed, as you can see. Her dress, his clothing, and his hat, and it's three-dimensional looking. It's very realistic. It's absolutely beautiful. That's some stuff we're going to skip through real quick, but we'll come back to it. Now, today we're going to talk about the Reformation as well. So you need to get your fresh note sheet out because we're going to talk about the Reformation. First of all, you have the Protestant Reformation. The Protestant Reformation is going to be the reason that Christianity, the Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic Church, and then you're going to have the Protestant faith. These are all Christian faiths, and they're going to cause a whole bunch of different branches of churches and branches of Christianity. First and foremost, before you can even have a reform, which reform means change if you're confused, you have to have some problems, because if you don't have anything you need to change, then you don't need a reform, okay? But if you're going to have reform or reformation, there's got to be some issues, because you got to get some change. You want some change. So first of all, the problems that we're going to have with the church and the Catholic religion during this time of faith is going to be corruption, abuse, and immorality. When we talk about corruption, you have to think about being corrupt is either being immoral or lacking ethics or doing something that is shady, shisty, sketchy, okay? Abuse. When we talk about the church is going to abuse their power. They're going to abuse the money that they receive from the people who come to worship at their church. And then you have immorality, which is lacking morals or having bad morals. Now, first problem is that the church, and there should be a number 1, I believe, on your paper. The church spends too much. They spend too much money, okay, on these extravagant art projects. And when we say the word extravagant, we mean these over the top. You know how you guys always say, you say, Ms. Cannon was shown out. Yeah, extravagant. The church is showing out during this time. Let me show you a couple pictures here. You have this beautiful, and it's beautiful, but it's detailed building. Gold statues. Guys, gold. Gold statues, okay? More gold. More gold, and all of this elaborate detail that you see here, these pillars and these marble floors, okay? This is all money that the church takes from people in the church that are offering money to God or for their sins, and they take this and make these churches elaborate and beautiful to establish their power, to show how wealthy they are. As you guys like to say, they're showing out. Now, the next problem that you're going to have is that people are going to lose respect for the church. They're also going to question the church. I told you science is getting big in the Renaissance. They're going to say, well, how did man get here? And the church is going to say, well, God created us. And everybody's not going to think that's a good enough answer. And they're going to lose respect for the church because they're noticing that, hey, people are throwing money at the church, like, forgive us for our sins. I want to give this offering to God so he'll bless my family. And they're noticing that the church is becoming more elaborate. There's more gold statues. There's giant pews and marble floor. when a lot of people are going to think, when I give this money to the church, I want you to feed the poor. I want you to do good things for our society and our community with this money. And all you're doing is taking and building gold statues. And, people are reading the Bible during this time, so they're going to be big on serving people. And the church is into serving themselves. Also, the church is going to sell indulgences, okay? They're going to sell these indulgences to people to pay for art projects. So they're going to say, listen, if you pay this indulgence of this so-and-so amount, we will pray for you that you will not end up in hell and that you'll have maybe even, you'll even avoid purgatory. You'll just go straight to heaven and the Lord will forgive you for your sins. What's the flaw here? What do you see? What is the flaw with the indulgence? I'll give you a second to think about it. All right, the flaw with the indulgence is going to be that the priests think that they have enough power to even tell someone that they could receive membership in heaven if they pray for them. Also, the biggest issue is that these people are paying for these indulgences, which go straight to art projects for the church. Okay, there's flaws here. And some people are going to have to choose between buying that loaf of bread for their family or paying this indulgence because they have such a deep fear of hell and purgatory that the church has instilled inside of them. If you don't know what instilled means, that the church has put inside of them to be so fearful of hell and purgatory and that they can't pray enough and get to heaven themselves, that they need the church. So here is the definition of an indulgence. It's a pardon that can reduce your time in purgatory or keep you out of hell. And so they're going to pay to stay away from hell or to have less time in purgatory. Another thing that they're going to do is people are going to start to be more loyal to their nation, a sense of nationalism, which you've learned that's pride in your own nation, rather than them having an allegiance or an alliance or being so loyal to the church during this time. Moving on. So, ready? Here we go. The early reformers. When we talk about early reformers, they're going to be those people who were paving the way for change, okay? They're doing it big. They're the movers and shakers of this time. The first person you're going to have is John Wycliffe. He's going to say, the church should give up their material possessions. So all those gold statues, John Wycliffe's going to be like, hey, those need to kick rocks, and you guys need to be helping the people out in society. How do you think the church is going to feel about that? Yeah, they're not going to like it. This is John Wycliffe right here. Check the beard out, y'all. The next person you're going to have is John Huss, which is he's going to preach against immorality and worldliness of the Catholic Church. And when I say immorality and worldliness, the immorality factor is you're having people pay so you'll pray for them, so they'll spend less time in purgatory. That makes no sense, and it's unfair to those people. Also, the worldliness of the Catholic Church is in reference to how elaborate and over the top the church is, as in gold statues, giant pews, marble floors, these priests with their beautiful robes and garments, and then you have people who are starving on the street. And the Catholic Church should be assisting them and bettering their life and spreading the message of Christianity. So John Huss is going to be like, hey, you guys have gotten away from the basics. You're showing out and you're over the top. This is John Huss right here. Now, another humongous, extremely important individual is going to be Martin Luther. Martin Luther is going to be that dude during this time. And I'm not talking about Martin Luther King. I'm talking about this Martin Luther right here. If it says anything to you, this Martin Luther's father changed his name to Martin Luther King, and his son is Martin Luther King Jr., which is right here. And they changed their names as an inspiration from Martin Luther, who will be an early reformer and the start of the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther King Jr.'s father was a reformer for civil rights. So if you can draw the connection, you can see that Martin Luther King Jr. right here, his father changed their name because he believed that him and his son would be reformers for civil rights in the 1950s and 60s. So it's a very interesting connection. So this man is named after this guy right here. So Martin Luther right here, you can check him out. He's a priest. Martin Luther in 1517, he is going to make a very bold move, and what he's going to do is start the Protestant Reformation. And what you need to do on your paper somewhere is to square out the word protest And the next word would be reform. Because what this man is going to do is he's going to protest the Catholic Church, and he wants change, which, if you remember, reform means change. Now, Luther is going to walk up and he's going to have his 95 Theses. 95 Theses, and if you need to make a note, which I believe I left you a box on your paper, the 95 Theses is 95 complaints against the Catholic Church. He's going to walk up and nail it to the church door in Wittenberg, Germany. Now, the 95 Theses is going to be written in academic Latin, okay? One thing you need to remember, and this is a picture. This is not an actual picture of Martin Luther because remember they don't have cameras, but it's like a reenactment. Martin Luther, the big thing is Martin Luther is going to be very bold because he's going to write a list of 95 things that he does not like about the church. And with the invention of the printing press, this will be replicated and people will read it and say, hey, I agree with Martin Luther. So what he's going to do is get the ball rolling on a massive change in the Christian world. And like I had one student tell me last semester that, Martin Luther had 95 theses, but Jesus won one. Because Martin Luther is going to throw this ideal of, hey, you don't have to rely solely on the church for your Christianity or your faith. You should have a relationship with Christ on your own. So here are some of the key points of the 95 Theses. Number 1, God's grace cannot be won by good works. So, you cannot just do good things like helping an old lady across the street and you're going to automatically get in heaven. Number 2, faith alone is needed to get to heaven. You have to have faith in Jesus Christ. You have to have faith in the relationship that you have with Jesus Christ to obtain membership into heaven. Jesus Christ is the head of the church, not the Pope. This is going to be a big deal. Martin Luther is going to say, listen, Pope, you're cool and everything, but you are not the head of the church. JC is. He's holding it down, okay? The Pope is not going to like this. And you've heard enough about the Pope to know that the Pope is going to be like, oh, heck no, he didn't say that. Now, also, Martin Luther is going to say this. People can read the Bible and interpret it without the help of a priest. The priest and the Catholic Church have been, telling people to pay these indulgences, and Martin Luther's going to say, listen, you don't need a priest to read the Bible. You guys have an education. You know how to read. You can read the Bible for yourself. You can interpret it the way you want. Also, the Bible's going to get translated into German, common language, during this time. So a lot of people are going to grab up and read the Bible. And what's going to happen next is a couple people are going to have some reactions to Martin Luther. First of all, Pope Leo X, that's what that X stands for, is going to excommunicate Luther. So he's going to tell Luther, yo, bro, you got to kick rocks because you're stirring the pot around here and I don't like it. Always remember Pope Leo X, that X, he excommunicated Luther, which means he booted Luther out, okay? What's going to happen next is that the Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V, is going to summons him to a meeting called the Diet in Worms, okay? And what's going to happen is that the Edict of Worms is going to declare Martin Luther an outlaw. What's an outlaw? I always think about cowboys and how you can be an outlaw and you get kicked out from society. You're wanted dead or alive. People don't want anything to do with you. They want you kicked out of society or they even want you killed. The next thing that's going to happen is that his ideas, though, and you have learned this a couple times in world history. We can reference Jesus of Nazareth. We can talk about even now in our society, Martin Luther King Jr. Anytime somebody comes into this world with some fresh ideas, there's always a group of haters, and you guys always call them haters, who want to smash the ideas, and they try to snub them or smash them out. Even when they try to suppress these individuals, their ideas continue to spread. And because everybody is like, the Holy Roman Emperor, the Pope are like, Martin Luther, shut up, get out of here. Everybody's like, Martin Luther is a big deal, okay? It's just like when your parents don't want you to like a rapper or like a certain music person, then you want to listen to them more. That's exactly what happens with Martin Luther. Because the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor are anti-Martin Luther, people are eating it up, okay? So his ideas are going to continue to spread, and by 1530, Lutheranism is an official, branch of Christianity, which Martin Luther was kind of anti having another branch of Christianity that was named after him. He's not big on that kind of stuff, but it's going to arise. Okay, this is Charles V. Check out the armor. Okay, Charles V is going to suppress the Lutherans in Germany, but the princes protest. The princes of Germany protest. So hence you get the whole Protestant. See, protest is the root word. And so this is going to further the Protestant Reformation. All right, and what we will continue with later is the spread of Protestantism, which Miss Cannon will talk to you about on Thursday when I see you, because I've been gone for 3 days and I have missed you all. Please feel free to forward, stop, rewind, do whatever you need to do. Make sure that your notes are thorough. Also, one thing that I'm noticing is that when you listen to these videos, you just write down the notes. You must listen. Listen to what Miss C is saying. There are a couple things that you probably want to go back and highlight, some key figures. Protestant Reformation is a key term, 95 Theses, things like that. And make sure you're really genuinely listening to the stories, because that helps you grasp the concept. I hope you have a wonderful day. Please behave in the library, and I will see you tomorrow.